So this morning's reading is from John chapter 4, beginning at verse 1. Jesus talks with a Samaritan woman. Now Jesus learnt that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews did not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can I get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man now that you have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you're a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshippers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming, and when he comes, he will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he."
Thanks so much, Val. It's quite a long reading that you've given to us. Thank you. All right, so it's really lovely this morning for us to have children and youth in our service rather than being in their groups, and we're really looking forward to continuing to be able to worship together. So I'd like all of us to take a moment to think of 2 people. Think of a person that you've met by chance. So not a planned meeting, but somebody that really interested you. And afterwards you were like, "Wow, that was great. I'm really glad I got to meet that person. Maybe it's Chloe Kelly as you're walking through the streets of Ealing, and she's just come back, celebrating as we all are. Secondly, I want you to think of a person who you would really love to meet, even if you don't think it would be possible. So a person from any time period and a person anywhere in the world. Okay, so have you got it? Have you got your two people? Right, Nick's going to come and help us with a mic, and we'd just like to hear from a few of you quickly. So first of all, who have you met at some stage? Can anybody offer us somebody they've met by accident? No one. Have none of you walked along? Right, Amanda's got someone.
So I was on a bus many years ago, going around South London, and I spotted this guy at the back of the bus who not many people will probably know, but his name's Carlos Acosta. He's a very famous ballet dancer. Oh, nice, there's some ballet fans in the house, yeah. And I'm a big fan, so I had to go and say hello, and much to Nick's embarrassment, gave him a whole sort of, I'm a big fan and all of that. But it was a lovely surprise, because no one else knew who he was, but I recognised him, so.
Super, thanks, Amanda. Anybody else? Okay, Sheena's got someone at the back.
Well, you were braver than me, because we came home from the Opera House one night, my daughter and I, and Edward Watson was on the same tube with us, carrying a bird of paradise flower that he'd been given in his curtain call. And we were too chicken, so well done you.
Fantastic. Right, Jono's going to go?
I very briefly once met Jason Donovan.
Ooh.
We were very lucky, and we managed to get tickets for the Strictly Come Dancing final. Can anyone remember when he was in the Strictly Come Dancing final? Any fans out there? Anyway, I met him in the toilet in between.
That was very unexpected.
I felt like I had to say hello to him, so I did, but that was pretty much it.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Jono. Right, has anybody got their second person? And I would like to hear from somebody young as well. Okay, not saying those of you who had your hands up aren't young, but you know what I mean? We've got kids here today. Right, so I think Steph was at the back. Steph, did you have your hand up? No, we'd love to hear, Steph.
Actually, thank you. It was actually an answer to the first one, because I actually by chance bumped into David Beckham when I was out shopping, and my husband was prodding me in the ribs going, "You've just met somebody," and I didn't want to put my hand up, but he forced me. So yeah, just to say I met David Beckham. But if there was somebody I wanted to meet, it would be Nelson Mandela for me.
Steph, that's what I was going to tell you. I would love to meet Nelson Mandela. I've met people who worked with him. I've met people who know him so well. I would love to have sat down and had a conversation. So, both of us the same, and I see Gaynor too. Right, Tobias?
Tobias would like to meet Paddington Bear.
I think that would be great. Anybody else? Who would you like to meet?
Martin Luther King.
Okay, super. Peter?
I once had a meeting with Diane Abbott many years ago. I've always had a great respect for her. I know she's a controversial figure, but she was my MP when I lived in Hackney, and she was, throughout the time I worked there. And she's great, folks.
Great, super. Thanks so much. Thanks, Nick. See, last Sunday, we started a series on encounters with Jesus. People who met Jesus and how that meeting changed their lives forever. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could meet Jesus face to face? Last week, Barry looked at how Nicodemus met Jesus. And as you heard from our reading with Val this morning, we're going to look at the encounter of the woman at the well with Jesus. Now, I thought that seeing there's some children here today, maybe it would be a good idea for us to watch that story. And you know, adults, you also really like to watch videos and kind of have repetitive learning. So, thank you, Anne. Well, Steve's now on the desk. We're going to just watch that quickly. Right, boys and girls, you should by now have received a worksheet. If you haven't got one, why don't you just put your hands up, because Nick and Amanda have got them, and it looks a little bit like this, okay, and they're going to bring those around to you. So, as we are having our talk today, boys and girls, there are quite a number of words on this sheet, and I'm going to encourage you to listen along. So when you hear me say one of these words, like there's one that says water, that's an easy one, then you cross it off. And let's see if by the end of our talk today, you can have crossed off all those words. There's also a little sheet here that says talk notes. And maybe you want to write something there that you've learned for the first time today. And you can write it in there or draw it in there. And then perhaps after the service, you can come and show me and let me know what you've learned this morning. All right. So many of us are quite familiar, I would think, with that story. We've just heard it twice now, so we know quite a lot about it. There's another story in the Bible as well that Jesus tells about a Samaritan man. This is about a Samaritan woman, and Jesus tells another story about a Samaritan man. So perhaps maybe some of you know a little bit about the Samaritans, and I thought maybe you could just help us this morning. Tell us something that you know about the Samaritans. Now, I see Nick's still busy. He was going to run around with the mic. So anybody can tell us anything you know about the Samaritan people?
Samaritans and Jews were not friends.
Aha, very good. Anything else? Anybody know anything about the Samaritans? Okay, yes.
The man was lying down, almost dead, and he was saved by Samaritan, I believe.
Okay, that's right. So, thank you. We've got a little bit of an idea about the Samaritans, but in order for us to understand the story, I think it's quite important that we know a little bit more about them. So, absolutely, what Tony said to us, Samaritans were not regarded very highly at all by the Jewish people. The Jewish people did all that they could to avoid going through Samaria. They really didn't want to talk to the Samaritan people, and they saw them as a race that was despised and who couldn't have a claim on the Jewish God. Now, that animosity is traced right back to 2 Kings, chapter 17, when Assyria conquered Israel. And Assyria brought other conquered people into Israel, into the land of Samaria. And those people who remained intermarried, and there was a new blend of people. And with that same blend of people, there became a blend of worship. And we read in verse 33 of that chapter, these people feared the Lord, but they also served their own gods in the customs of the nations from which they had been brought. Their worship wasn't the same as that of the Jewish people. And so these tensions arose. The Jews viewed the Samaritans as being unclean or being outsiders. The Jews had their temple. The Samaritans weren't allowed in it. The Samaritans actually built their own temple. And about 200 years before Jesus was born, the Jews destroyed that temple that was on Mount Gerizim, which is referred to in that passage that we've read. So that's just a little bit of a background to the people who were known as the Samaritans. But now we need to go back to John chapter 4. If you haven't got a Bible and you'd like to follow along, there's some in the bookshelf at the back, in other languages as well as in English. So if you'd like to grab one, you're welcome to do so. Now, it's quite interesting for us to see that this story about Jesus and the Samaritan woman is only in the Gospel of John. The other Gospels don't mention it at all. And the reason for that is because John had a specific purpose in his Gospel. And we read what that is in chapter 20, verse 31. And John says this, he said, "These things are written so that you can believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name." You see, this story that is told helps us to see that Jesus really is the Messiah and the life that we can have because of that. Now, in John's writings, he gives lots of specific details, and he does that again when he talks to us about this encounter. And it's quite important for us to hear those details because they all add up to give us this full picture. There's not time for us this morning to look at all of them, but I encourage you. I've so enjoyed studying this passage afresh for today. Go and read it and read it and reread it, and you'll be amazed how much there is in this passage. So the first very detailed bit of information that we get is in verses 3 to 6, and I think there's a slide for this. You will see that John tells us that Jesus was leaving Judea for Galilee. and he had to go through Samaria. So if you look at that map, that arrow shows us from Judea in the south up to Galilee in the north, and they had to go through Samaria. We said earlier, Jewish people tried to avoid Samaria at all costs, but Jesus went through. And in recent maps, if you look, you won't see the name of that town, Sychar. You'll see something that is called Shechem. I think that's how you pronounce it. And that is the more modern day name than Sychar. But it's important for us to know about Sychar, because John tells us that when Jesus came to Sychar, later known as Shechem, there was the well of Jacob. And that's another little bit of information that John gives us that is really important. So hold on to that. I think as we look at this encounter, there are 3 W's. The well, the woman, the water, and another one is worship, but we won't go into that today. Right, so let's go back and find out a little bit more about this well. Some of you may remember the story in Genesis chapter 29, where Jacob met Rachel at the well. Jacob was traveling and he went to the land on the east and he saw a well in the field and he went over to this well. And there was a very large stone on the well. And that was because the shepherds kept it closed. When their sheep came, they removed the stone, they watered the sheep, and they then put that stone back on again. And when Jacob got there, he wanted to remove that stone, but we were told that the shepherd said to him, no, don't remove it, just wait. And there was a reason for that, because a little while later, Rachel came. And she came at about 12 noon, and we're told that the sun was still high in the sky. And that's another detail that we must remember. And as she came with her sheep, Jacob jumped up, he went, he opened the well for her, and as they say, the rest is history. We know that they met and they got married after that encounter at the well. Now, that story was a very well-known story for the Jewish people and for the Samaritans. And so, when Jesus was meeting with this woman at the well, she would have known that story of Jacob. And where was Jesus? He was at Jacob's well. We see that often, though, or sometimes, where there was a woman, a man, and a well, there was also a wedding. So we have mentioned it with Jacob, but also if you think of Isaac and Rebekah, they met at a well and there was a wedding. So hold that thought. Is there going to be a wedding with the woman at the well? I don't think we read one, but just hold on for that. Right, so as John goes on in verse 7, he introduces to us this unnamed Samaritan woman. Everybody else we've spoken about this morning has a name, but she didn't. You'll remember that Jacob opened the well at noon, which is also known as the 6th hour. And that wasn't a chance meeting that he had with Rachel. And nor was this a chance meeting that the woman, the unnamed woman, had with Jesus. You see, in both of these encounters, God was working out his plans and his purposes in fine detail. The same time, noon, the 6th hour, that was the time that Jesus met the woman at the well. And why did she come to the well at that time? That was the hottest time of the day. Usually fetching water in those days would have been a time of joy, a time of a lot of chatter for the women. They would catch up on life, meet with their friends, have a little conversation before the day got too hot, and then they would go back home. The fact that she came and she was on her own tells us something. It tells us that she didn't feel comfortable to come with the rest of the women. Perhaps it was her shame and her brokenness. Perhaps it was because she had been shunned and rejected by the other women and the other men in the town. This woman was different from the others. But Jesus, he treated her with utmost respect. He opened the conversation with her, and he invited her to draw water for him. I loved the little cartoon. You could see how surprised she was when Jesus spoke to her, or even shocked. Why would a Jewish man ask a woman, and a Samaritan woman at that, to draw water? Why would he even speak to a woman? In those days, there was great prejudice against women, and we know that it was even stated that a man should not speak to a woman on a street, not even if that was his wife, much less if she was married to somebody else. And definitely they were forbidden for speaking to a woman alone. Yet, Jesus broke the prejudice of that day, and he spoke gently with the woman with whom he was alone. He broke the prejudice of that day and spoke gently with a Samaritan woman with whom he was alone. Jesus had asked the woman to draw water for him, but he also offered her a different type of water. Now, she knew all about the mechanics of drawing water. She said to him, well, how can you get water if you haven't got anything with which to draw it up? But she didn't understand about the water that Jesus was speaking about. She was so intrigued because he told her that this water could last forever. She wouldn't have to come every day in the heat of the day and be reminded that she was alone. She wouldn't have to get fresh water when her other water ran dry or was stale. And she asked Jesus, please, can I have some of this water? And you know, Jesus gently turns to her. I really believe he said this gently and said to her, fetch your husband and come back. And that was a pivotal moment in their encounter. You see, even though she didn't know who Jesus was, Jesus knew exactly who she was, and he knew how other people perceived her. A woman who had been married 5 times, and the man she was now with was not her husband. Often this woman has been portrayed as immoral, sinful woman, almost as if she deserved to be an outcast because of her lifestyle. But have you noticed that at no time does Jesus rebuke her? At no time does he say to her, go and sin no more, as he does with the woman caught in adultery in John chapter 8. Rather, he gently offers her living water, and he offers her salvation. You see, it's very easy to judge a woman like that. She was living with a 6th man, and he was not her husband. But when we look at the culture of the day, we'll see that women had some rights, but girls were married off very young. They were often married off 12, 13 years of age. Their fathers would choose their husbands, and on many occasions they'd be older men. It's quite possible that some of those husbands actually died because they were a lot older than she was. Also, in Jewish law, it was only husbands who were allowed to divorce their wives, not wives divorce their husbands. And men could do it for any reason. Perhaps her marital status was a story of repeated rejection and brokenness. Jesus didn't rebuke her. He lovingly offered her water. Widowed or divorced women in Bible times were expected to remarry, and the families always had the responsibility of finding a husband. Maybe this last man she was with was someone she hadn't been forced to marry. Maybe it was someone she loved. Jesus didn't rebuke her. I wonder this morning if perhaps some of us feel a little bit unknown and misunderstood as she was, cast out because people don't really know us. The woman is not given a name, yet Jesus saw her. He sought her out. He knew much more about her than just her name, but he looked beyond her circumstances and offered her salvation. You see, he knows us. He sees us. He calls us by name. And today he offers us that same living water and salvation that he offered to her as well. But the fact that Jesus knew all about her really blew her mind. And she asked, "Are you greater than the father Jacob?" So, as we've already said, she would have known a lot about Jacob. She would have known a lot about the well. She would have known that's where Jacob and Rachel met. In her eyes, Jacob was a true father of the faith. And so, if this man was even greater than Jacob, he was definitely more than an ordinary man. Perhaps he was even a prophet. Yes, he was greater than Father Jacob. Jacob may have provided his children with physical water in an arid land, but Jesus provides his children with living water in a spiritual wasteland. The water that Jesus gives, the life that he gives to us, meets our needs and gives us eternal life. So when she realized that he must be a prophet, she turned the conversation to one of the chief issues that were dividing the Jews and the Samaritans of that day. Samaritans worshipped on the mountain. I told you earlier that was called Mount Gerizim, and they actually worshipped there even though their temple had already been destroyed. But that was where they worshipped. But the Jewish people claimed that you needed to worship Jesus in Jerusalem, or to worship God in Jerusalem. And she wanted to know what was true. Was it up the mountain, or was it in Jerusalem? And Jesus took time to explain to her. He didn't brush her off. And he explained to her that the Samaritans worshipped what they didn't know. The Jews worshipped what they did already know, that they could have salvation. But Jesus explained to her that true worship is in spirit and in truth, and it's open to anyone, not only the Jewish people, and it's not only restricted to being in the temple. And at that moment, her eyes were opened, and she was able to see the truth. She knew that the Messiah was coming, and she said, "Well, it's okay, the Messiah is going to be able to explain all of this to me." And Jesus revealed to her that he was the Messiah. He was the one who could bring water that was eternal life. He could bring water that would restore what was broken and make it something beautiful and new. And he could bring water that would sustain, water that was available to everybody, Jews and Samaritans. And I wonder if you realize the significance of that. Jesus revealed himself for the first time. He revealed himself for the first time to a woman, and he revealed himself for the first time to a discarded Samaritan woman. She was so astounded that she left her water jar at the well and she returned to town to tell others about Jesus. You see, Jesus used this broken, outcast woman with no name to tell others about the living water he could bring and to reveal to the men and women of Samaria that Jesus was the Messiah, the Savior of the world. This woman, this outcast woman, became the first evangelist. Through her, the men of Samaria came to know about Jesus. And we're told that they came to the well to talk to Jesus. And he eventually spent 2 days with them there. And in verse 41, John tells us that many became believers because that woman went and told them, "Come and meet this man who's told me everything about me." I wonder if sometimes we feel that we can't tell others about Jesus, perhaps because of our brokenness or our shame, the fact that we are just a woman, whatever it is that we feel. But God can use us. He used that woman. She was the first person that he revealed himself to, and she made history. Her encounter not only changed her life, but it changed the life for the people of Samaria, and it continues to change lives today. A man, a woman, a well, and a wedding. This woman became part of the new family of Jesus, the bride of Christ. She invited others to follow and become part of the bride of Christ too, just as we are the bride of Christ today. For centuries, Samaritans had been told that they were shut out from God's mercy, that they were second class, in the eyes of the Jewish people. But Jesus welcomed them. He welcomed the outcasts, and he used them to further his kingdom. The excluded became included, and the circle of God's purpose embraced each one of them too, as it embraces each one of us today. This woman came to the well as an outcast, but she left accepted, loved, and with a purpose to tell others about the Messiah. This morning, Jesus sees us, and he initiates a conversation with us as well. He offers us living water, and he invites us to be part of his family, to be part of the wedding, that we can be the bride of Christ. And so from these thoughts, I wonder this morning how each of us encounter Jesus. I wonder if perhaps some of us are like the unnamed woman, feeling unseen, misunderstood, shunned by others who don't know us. Perhaps you feel that if Jesus really knew you, he would not be speaking to you. This morning, Jesus invites you to come to the one who sees and understands, the one who accepts us for our past, the one who loves us in the present, and the one who welcomes all to follow him. Perhaps you too, like the Samaritan woman, have heard of the promised Messiah, the one who's come to bring us new life, but you haven't yet encountered him. And this morning, Jesus says, he is the Messiah, and he is here to bring you new life. A life is that for all who believe, no matter where you're from, no matter what your background or your past is, no matter what you previously believed or followed, Jesus is the Messiah, and he's ready to encounter you. It's holiday time, but perhaps this morning you're weary from making the daily trip to the well in the heat of the day to draw the water that needs to be replenished each single day. Jesus offers us living water that daily refreshes us, water that he provides and never ends. You know, Jacob's well is still running today. You can still get water from that well. In the same way, Jesus' living water never dries up, and it's available by his Spirit for us each and every day. Perhaps you have encountered Jesus, and your life has been changed. Maybe this morning, Jesus is inviting you to be like that Samaritan woman and to go out and tell others about him. We have got such an amazing thing. We've got a relationship with Jesus. How about sharing that with other people who don't yet know it? The woman left behind her water jar, and she ran to tell others. And perhaps this morning, Jesus is calling you to leave behind those things that are holding you back and to bring others to him. So I'm going to ask the worship team to come up now. And as they do so, if you're able, maybe you'd like to stand with us.